Okay, we are live. Are you ready to get nuts, Richard?
Ready.
Okay. On today's episode of Playing Small is Cancelled, we have a very exclusive treat. He's an author, a dynamic transformational speaker, CEO, and father of three girls, Big Facts. As the CEO of the number one ultra wealthy investors club, Family Office Club, he leads a network of over 7,500 investors and hosts 16 in person events each year. And he runs the most listened to podcast on family offices and the most watched YouTube channel in the space. No big deal. Over the last 17 years, his company has spent 25 million hosting 300 plus live events, and his total following across all social media surpasses 15 million, just to name a few. He also owns and operates billionaires.com, where he's interviewing 100 billionaires to create the number one resource on their scaling strategies and mindset. Please welcome the brilliant, creative, insightful, and handsome, the trailblazer, Richard C. Wilson. How you doing, Richard?
Thanks, Craig. Great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited for the conversation. I know we have some mutual friends who were kind of chopping it up before we hopped on, and this is going to be so valuable. For our listeners, for our community, in case you weren't familiar, my best suggestion is do a deep dive, play catch up, check out all the things he's got going on. What I think is most valuable today is we just dive right in. But before we do, I have a little icebreaker for you. Are you ready for me?
Go for it.
For you personally, how important is it for you to be connected to your mission?
I mean, part of what being ultra wealthy means for most people is freedom. But what many realize is that when you look at the hierarchy of needs, having your health is the most important thing. So for me, our mission is that it's not just about being ultra wealthy, it's about being ultra healthy and having that fuel the growth of your wealth and your energy, et cetera. So that's a daily kind of hourly thing. I try to keep my whole family online with that mission. So super important.
I love it. And I had a feeling it was. And I know what it feels like to not be connected before I reinvented myself and so forth. And when you're connected to what you're doing and it means something to you, and it's very meaningful, it just makes it so much better way of life.
Right.
And interestingly enough, it tends to lead to more money too, because you're doing it from the right consciousness.
Right. For sure. I find that like a lot of times bringing up being ultra healthy, like what I'm doing, is just a way to connect with clients another level. They don't really expect to be talking about that at an investment club event. No one else really talks about that, it seems, in the space. It's all about portfolio management and what hedge fund you want to go into or what direct investment they're doing. And so I think you're totally right. It attracts people that think like you and have the same priorities with you when you're more genuine and authentic, instead of trying to look like a commoditized robot and saying everything that everybody else is saying, you know?
Yes. Amen. This is great. So many places we could take this. For people that might just be introduced to you for the first time, that might not know, I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs in our community. What exactly is a family office, and how does that particular industry operate?
Sure. A family office is really just an investment solution for winners in the game of capitalism, right? Like, so if you run or sell a business and you're making 500,000 a year, 1 million a year, or much more, or if you sell a business and you're worth, 5, 7, 10 million, tens of millions, or 100 million plus, you probably need different solutions. You for sure need different solutions, and you think differently than those that are worth $100,000. And so the whole point of the family office space is that if you make a small mistake and you're worth $100,000, that mistake might cost you $500. If you make a small mistake, quote unquote, and you're worth 20 million or 100 million, that mistake could cost you $200,000 or $50,000. You could have then hired a full-time person just to make sure you updated your LLCs, got your quarterly tax payments in, paid different counties and other groups that send you notices in the mail every 2 days when you've got 50 LLCs, and just stay on top of all the minutia and helping you play a good defense so you as an entrepreneur can focus on playing offense and make less $50,000 mistakes along the way and do things a bit more holistically. The ultimate goal for every entrepreneur is figure out what they're amazing at, what they're passionate about, and spend most of their time doing that. And so you just need a team around you to pull that off. And that's basically what a family office is for.
Beautifully said. It's funny because so many entrepreneurs, they want to be entrepreneurs. They want freedom, the money, the lifestyle, but they have trouble focusing and narrowing down on what exactly it is that they want to do. Do you see that often?
Yeah, I see that a lot, especially for people who are about to sell their first company or just did. many times I'll have someone who made their money in auto dealerships or dental practices, and they sell. They say, I don't know what to do with my time. I don't know what to do with myself. Maybe I'll open a bar. Maybe I'll start a restaurant. Maybe I'll invest in a whole bunch of random industries. And okay, there's a place for diversification in everyone's portfolio typically, but they don't realize that after 10,000 hours running an auto business or being a dental practice owner, that you could invest in that same space and you don't have to start your own dentist practice again. You could go and be the chairman of the board of a practice. You could be a advisor. You could be a board member. You could just be a passive investor and know how to do the due diligence better. So this comes up all the time with clients that I talk to.
Yeah, love it. So insightful. In regards to family offices, is there typically like a roadmap or an industry trend where they allocate their capital, or each office is run a little bit differently with their own creativity?
Many times in this industry, people use this excuse to not be very helpful when answering such a question. They say, oh, if you know one family office, you know one, they're all different, but it's not really true. When you're around for a long time, it's more like looking at the jungle and say, here's a genus and species of an animal. And with this type of a family that has this type of first generation wealth, they typically have these traits. And there's different variations within that box, but that's the real answer. And so the most generic answer I can give that could be helpful would be that most families like to have some money in the public markets. Most families like to have some money in cash flowing real estate that are hard assets, beats inflation, plays offense and defense for you, while the public markets are mostly playing defense. And then most families have a third bucket where they play offense. And that's usually in just one or two niches. So the family might make the money in manufacturing. Maybe they believe in the future of stem cells. They might play offense in those two niches, invest in 4 different real estate food groups in 5 different states they like, and then tell their wealth advisor, hey, we love, Tesla and Costco and Amazon. Otherwise, just diversify me and make sure I don't lose all my money. And that's kind of like the percentages will be different, but that's kind of like the template. Those 3 buckets are usually at play with the family office.
I love it. And each family has different common traits, I would imagine, that you partner with.
Right. So a 4th generation family where the first generation was worth 200 to 300 million and they made their initial money in manufacturing. Typically, by 4th generation, they're just playing a diversification defense game. They typically have no offense game. They may invest in real estate, but mostly through fund managers. Where first gen families, where the father or mother is still in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and the second gen is being groomed to take over, they have a lot of things in common as well. They may still own many businesses within their niche. The next generation may have found a family member or two still interested in that niche. So the percentage that people are investing in their offensive game and the percentage where people are just playing pure defense changes greatly based on like the generation that you're dealing with the wealth.
Makes perfect sense. What do you personally love the most about what you do?
What I love the most is that running our investor club is like a perpetual learning machine, right? Like every time, like next week's event, we have 120 speakers on stage in 3 days. There's no way that you listen to 120 people and you don't find 10 or 20 super insightful for exactly what you are curious about. And the cool thing is that I get to cheat a little bit. After coming to 300 of my own events, I don't want to get bored, and I get bored very easily. So I asked all the questions I'm curious about on the discussion panels. I script every single discussion panel question. So if somebody came to 50 of our events, they would continue to be unique and dialed into, what I'm selfishly curious about. And I feel like that's a good litmus test for making sure it's not like the same event over and over again and boring people. So that's the part I enjoy the most, just the mental growth of it all.
I love that that's so important to you, to make sure that everybody, because I'm sure you have a lot of people that go to a lot of them because you have a community and so
Right.
forth, but you keep the experience different and refreshing each time.
Right. Yeah. I think importantly, when I started this business, I had less money in my bank account than I had due for rent that month,
Whoa.
living in Harvard Square. And everything I built with my business was from studying the ultra wealthy, interviewing them, reading books, sucking up information, and then just speed of implementation and just execution and finding the next good mentor. And that I hope is inspiring to people that don't have money and they're listening to this and they're trying to raise capital for their AR startup or their real estate development firm. It's like Mark Cuban says, you don't need all the money in the world. You don't even need all the network that you think people need to be successful. You just need to focus on a niche and outlearn everybody else in that niche, and you'll have an amazing advantage over everybody else.
That's beautiful. We dropped the mic, but we're just getting warmed up. And thank you for sharing that. I love the vulnerability. And that is so encouraging for everybody. There's no secret sauce. Some people think you just have to have connections, but
Right.
learn and be able to focus and put your energy there. You're interviewing a ton of billionaires. You're kind of obsessed with that. So am I.
Yeah.
I love that about you. What are some cool or interesting billionaire strategies for success that you've noticed or maybe even modeled?
Sure. Some have just been hammered so hard over so many books. For example, I just read a book from Ted Turner, just read two books through Oprah, I just read one of Richard Branson's books all over the last week. And just so many dozens of the books talk about how it's not just an aspect that billionaires do things differently. It's like core to their DNA that if everyone says this is the way it's done, they automatically think that's not the way we do it. Or if someone says they're crazy or they don't get it, that's not how this industry works, or that will never work, they actually know they're on the right path and they lean forward. Where common sense might tell you, like tomorrow I'm interviewing Robert Cialdini for my podcast and YouTube, and common sense would tell you you should follow social proof. Oh, what does everyone else do? Oh, it's safe to eat those blueberries on the mountain. Okay, I'll eat the blueberries. But they know they will never scale above average if they do what the average person does, and that's just so core to their DNA. People know that, but I don't think they apply it every day to everything they're doing. So that's just one thing I wanted to emphasize. And then I think the other thing is just making sure that you're strategic in the assets you're acquiring, so you can scale massively. That you have to keep things relatively simple to scale sometimes, but you also have to be very strategic and long-term minded. And sometimes the plans that they are working on don't unfold for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I love that because those are trendsetters, right? Not necessarily
Right.
followers. If you hear something that's supposed to be done a certain way, there's a different breed of people that think automatically, how do I think outside that box? How can we do things a little bit differently? That's
Right.
not necessarily an indication of how it has to be done. And those
Right.
are the type of cats that typically change the world.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think that one thing I've noticed after reading, I've read 105 books authored by billionaires now out of the 240 that exist. And just now, having read 100 of them, not like an AI summary, but actually reading them or listening to the full Audible, just now, I find myself having my thoughts kind of filtered by that general consensus, that way that they typically talk, the way they typically think, in terms of expectations from my team, our plans for the future. And it's kind of like the 5 people you hang out with most type thing, right? So I think that there's a subconscious level that all this stuff impacts you at if you focus on something enough.
Beautiful. I love it. In regards to investors or someone that's raising money and they're creating a pitch deck,
Right.
what are some common pitch deck mistakes maybe that you've noticed?
Sure. Some of the biggest ones is that they'll have a 45-page pitch deck. No one's going to read that. You could put the word Mickey Mouse in the middle of it, ask your spouse and your business partner to see if they notice anything wrong, and they won't catch it. And so most of the time they think the pitch deck is the holy grail and need to stuff everything in there. Instead, I would make it 12 to 19 pages long. I would for sure have a one pager to go with your pitch deck, not just a pitch deck. Have a one liner that hits people between the eyes and they can't help but want to learn more and be very excited to hear more, so you don't look like everybody else in your industry. And then make sure you have a video from you as the founder that's 3 to 4 minutes maximum that says something compelling, to show off your expertise and why they should take a meeting with you, and have that on your one pager, your website, and your pitch deck. I think that those are all things that cost absolutely nothing. We're not telling people to go out and spend $100,000 on design. We're just saying, like, do these basics, because almost nobody does those 3 or 4 things I just mentioned.
So funny. And so longer doesn't necessarily mean better. In fact, maybe quite the opposite. Less might be more.
Yeah. It means worse, right? Like, one of my mentors was Eben Pagan, and he turned me on to Jay Abraham and Gary Halbert and a bunch of copywriting experts. And there's a saying in the copywriting industry, I think John Carlton is the one who brought it up the most. And he says that I'm sorry I wrote so much. I didn't have more time to make it concise. In other words, it's just basically not choosing what's most important to tell somebody 75 pages of stuff about what you're doing. Everybody's busy. Your best investors have the least amount of time to get what you're doing. So if you don't make it hyper clear, you're dead. If your pitch deck says Wilson Capital, copyright 2024, and then the next page is disclosures and the next page is table of contents, they got to get 4 pages in before they know anything about what you're doing, right? The brand of your company should tell people what you do and why they should work with you. Your one-liner, front of page or your pitch deck. Your video, page 2. And that's completely different. That could change your whole life just making those changes if you're raising capital right now.
That right there is an 8-figure nugget. And it's so true, because we get pitched a lot too to be on advisors, the way we built our personal brand and so forth. And oftentimes it takes so many pages to just even see what's going on here.
Right.
And I see this very humbly, like, especially you, you don't have that much extra time. So you kind of get to the point often and, go deep right away. Yeah, no, that's great advice.
Yeah, we have hundreds and hundreds of investors on stage per year. Like just in the next 2 months, we have 250 speakers on stage at our next 2 events. And so doing this for 17 years now, I don't know how many times I've heard that you have like 4 seconds, half a sentence, the first line of your email, the subject line of your email. Otherwise, you're gone, because people start their days and they have 175 to 500 plus emails in their inbox. They're trying to figure out, like, I can type like the wind, and on a productive day, I'm getting 65 to 85 emails sent. So you can imagine someone who's much wealthier than me, 15, 20 years older than me. How many emails are they sending a day? 20, 30? Right? So you're dead if you don't stand out night and day from everything else in their inbox.
Yeah, this is awesome. You mentioned your events, strictly off the cuff. You have another event coming up pretty soon in Brooklyn. Is that right?
Right. Yep. October 3rd to 5th. We're going to have about 500 people at that event. And the founder of Barefoot Wines, they're going to be there. They started from zero and got it $500 million as one of the top wine brands in the United States. So we're going to do a fireside chat with them and have discussion panels with pro athletes and angel investors and tech investors and family offices, et cetera.
I imagine it's probably sold out, but is there any way that anyone's listening or that might see this? Is there an ability for them to go, or who is that event for?
Yeah, it's actually not sold out because we try to make it very exclusive. We used to sell event tickets. We used to do like a very low entry subscription model. Now we have more of just a membership model. We've found, after running some conferences with 1,500 people at them, that quality is super important versus quantity of people. Yes. And basically, if $5,000 or $6,000 looks very expensive to someone for an annual membership, then that's not the type of person that the family offices typically are going to want to engage with, because they want someone who has a real business behind them, that has some progress, already has success, et cetera. They'll sometimes seed ideas from nothing, and there's a place for that. But we try to make it relatively exclusive. And familyoffices.com is our website. It's got all the event details and whatnot.
I love it. Okay. Pivoting for a second. For investors out there, and we have a lot in our community, what is a way, I imagine you know better than anybody, for investors to increase their deal flow?
Yeah, great question. Many investors don't realize how bad their deal flow is. One of my friends sold their business for $30 million. And he said, "Oh, it's amazing. I've probably seen 30 deals over the last 4 years." And many people, like a Jeff Hoffman, Mark Cuban, friends of ours, is, they'll see 30 deals per hour, and a well-connected family office will see, at least 30 deals a week, right? And so the goal is not to see thousands and thousands of deals. The goal is to see deals which are amazing for your family office. And so typically that means you select what real estate food groups you like and what states. You put it out there that you're on the hunt to find those, so you get deals that are exactly what you're looking for in your strike zone. But then also, the bigger strategy that almost nobody does is the best family offices figure out where they're going to play offense. Like, let's say they made their money in dry cleaners. and they sold their business, and they had 3 or 5 or 10 dry cleaning locations. Well, now they should maximize to play offense, maybe their deal flow in the dry cleaning space. So how do they do that? They could speak at the Dry Cleaner Owners Association, which costs $10,000 a year to be a member or whatever. They could, more importantly, maybe create a database and say, we want to invest in dry cleaners in the state of Texas and the state of Arizona. So let's create a database of 400 dry cleaners in those states, create a one-line email, reach out to them, and get people who never thought about selling yet, and you are who they want to be when they grow up. So they will reply to your email while they ignore private equity all day long. And you can say, hey, I built my dry cleaning business to 4 locations. I sold. I'd love to invest in your business or sit on your board or maybe even buy your business or partner. Do you mind jumping on a phone call for 5 minutes? And that's completely different than a private equity offer. And then you'll originate deals that no one else has seen and is not shopped by a banker.
Unbelievable. I imagine at this stage you've really gotten comfortable and love to use the word no. Is that right?
That's right. But getting better and better at that, I think, is a challenge for every founder on planet Earth, because every year you have more LLCs, more K1s, more opportunities coming at you. And the quality of those opportunities gets better. And the problem with that is that you are screening for what you said no to last year. It no longer works for this year, because there's more coming at you at higher quality. So every year I feel like you have to come up with more strategies on saying no, more ways of saying no, and tightening up communication so you don't spend your whole life on, one-on-one Zoom calls and phone calls,
Yes. Amen. This is so good. For people that are looking to raise money, maybe they don't even know where to begin on their quest. What's a good maybe first step to begin your journey to start raising capital?
Sure. One thing is to focus and make sure you're doing something that's very high conviction. That when people look at it, they get high conviction, and that you yourself are sold on it. No one's going to take something more seriously than you take it yourself. So if you're emailing people with a Gmail address and you're kind of doing some daisy chain, raising capital for 5 things, like this $1 billion resort in the Caribbean on an island and some foreign oil and gas deal with someone you've never met, like that's just LinkedIn amateur hour 101, and you're dead. If you've never raised capital, don't go out there and try to raise $1 billion. Michael Jordan couldn't jump from basketball straight into Major League Baseball, and he's the most talented, hardworking guy that ever lived, right? So don't think you're going to go from not raising capital, like, oh yeah, just close this $400 million deal. More power to you if you're the first person in 17 years I've ever met that can pull that off, but you're not going to, as is candidly the reality in my experience. And then the other thing is that I spent time to record 17 free videos on my YouTube channel. It's under Centimillionaire Strategies on YouTube, under playlists. There's something called the $100 Million Rainmaker series. And there's 17 videos there for free that are 4 to 7 minutes long each. And there's dozens and dozens of strategies to raise capital within that playlist.
So good. So helpful. And we'll put all that up in the show notes. From your experience, what are some good time management priorities for investors based upon what you've studied and so forth?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked it that way, because especially for investors, but I think for everyone, only communicating with people via phone call and Zoom instead of emails, I think, is a strategy for a decade or two ago. I feel like the world's moving more towards audio messages, and we use this extensively. So I save hundreds of hours with what I'm about to tell you. So I get emails, people say, hey, I want to jump on a call, tell you about this idea. And then I say, okay, great. Well, we're chatting here on email or LinkedIn already. Can you shoot over a teaser on the idea? Because, if it's a mobile app startup from Pakistan, it's just not what I'm focused on. So I just need to know kind of what you want to talk about. And what I found is that if the person can't write it clearly and concisely, then they're not thinking clearly. They don't have a clear idea. They kind of want to brainstorm and shoot from the hip and waste your time. So that saves me a ton of time. Then when people do tell me something that could result in a phone call or a conversation, I say, oh, can you write out an agenda of what 5 or 7 things you want to cover? They'll write it out. And then I will reply to their agenda items and say, yes, yes, no, we would never do that. We always do that. And yeah, let's jump on a phone call, because number 3 sounds like something that really is meaty and we need to actually talk it through. And the other points, we're all in agreement already, so we don't need to spend verbal time walking through each point. And that there saves me a ton of time, because also the topic could be great, but then once I see the bullet points, I'm like, nope, sorry, we can't help you, but my team member can, or my friend John can, or, and then it just leads to a referral without me having to get on the phone. That's another thing that saves me a ton of time. And then the third thing is that while other people set up phone calls and Zooms, I let people know that I do almost everything via audio message. So we can talk on text message or WhatsApp audio. And by the time that my competition has set up a Zoom call or sent someone a Calendly link, and then someone shows up 3 minutes late and my mic doesn't work like today it didn't, so I got to hold my new iPhone here and it's shaking the whole video. By the time that the competition has set up that Zoom call for 6 days from now, I've already traded 3 audio messages with the person, and we already solved the issue, moved it forward, and there's no, hey, how's the weather there? Hey, where are you based? It's just kind of like, hey, can you help me with this? Oh yeah, that's what we do. Let me connect you to this person. Done. And it's just lightning fast compared to Zoom and phone calls, which are just, death to my soul if I let it take over my life.
I love the way you speak, brother, and I understand completely. And, I reinvented myself from Wall Street to doing what I'm doing now. And in the beginning, it was a lot of Zooms, a lot of coffee chat, virtual coffee chats, and they're
Yeah.
effective because when you get someone that's aligned, you can get something done, but it's very time consuming. And I never articulated it like this, but the way you just said it struck a chord, death to the soul. Like, you look at your schedule and just zoom, 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 zoom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Painful. The other thing is, I have all of my Zooms and calls on Wednesdays. And I learned this from Dan Sullivan, who's one of my mentors. And I do my focus day. My focus days are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And my time for calls and podcasts, et cetera, like this, are on Wednesdays. And that way my Wednesday might be a bit messier. I still have meetings with people. I still get on Zooms with people. But I want to reserve that for, a ultra wealthy family we're working with, or a key partner, or an exciting show to be on like yours. And handle other things very quickly via audio message and other things like using my team.
Yeah, well said. Time well spent. How important is it for you to have mentors? I know that you have a lot of indirect mentors, books that you read, but actual mentors in your life.
It's been very important. At the beginning, it was Brian Tracy and Jeffrey Gitomer, studying their materials and then meeting them in person. Then it was Evan Pagan, meeting him in person and getting mentored through his group coaching and a little bit one-on-one. Then it was Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach. Now what I've found is that instead of going to other coaching programs, I just try to have the most amazing speakers in the world and most amazing people speaking at my own events. So I'm putting my energy into making our events more and more exciting and growth mindset oriented. And then the other thing is that for now, I feel like reading 240 books authored by billionaires and then interviewing the 100 billionaires, there'll be a few mentors that come from that process. But for the current time, there's just a nonstop feed of kind of billionaire insights from the books I'm reading, the Audible books and everything from the billionaires. So super critical.
Love it. So good. Before we land the plane, I wanted to ask you, with the business that you run and also your desire for your family and adventure, how do you, I never like this word balance, but how do you integrate all of that? No problem.
Yeah. So I don't really worry about the semantics of work-life balance, et cetera. I just have some rules I try to abide by. So on the weekends, I only work before my family's awake. So I'll work from 4 a.m. till 7 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. when we're traveling. Like, we're going to Bali in a couple of weeks for 12 days and with my kids and my wife. And so when I'm there, I'll get up between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. and then I'll work until they're done eating their breakfast, say 8:30 a.m. And then we're off in Bali for the day. And I got 4.5 hours of work done, and a great excuse not to jump on tons of Zooms. Like, oh, sorry, I'm overseas in Bali. Let's just handle this via audio message. And then, I can get tons done with great focus with no meetings going on really while there. I also don't do any client dinners. I'll have a client breakfast or lunch or a coffee meeting. But the whole year I do 0 client dinners because that's time with my kids. And I'm an early riser. My brain's not very useful by 4 p.m., 5 p.m. So that's the way I kind of keep things balanced, is to have those time restrictions around not being a workaholic. And then I go on a lot of, long walks and runs and workouts here in Hawaii. And when I'm doing like a hour and a half hike up a local summit here, I do a couple times a week. I'll listen to the billionaire books so I can shoot off an audio message to my team, stream billionaire ideas into my brain, and get the exercise knocked out all at once. So it feels like double productive versus just going to a gym with pounding hip hop music, and then I'm not getting the billionaire ideas. So those are some of the things I keep in mind.
100%. And I'm training right now for the New York City Marathon, which is in 5 weeks. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, look, my long runs, like I had one this morning.
Yeah.
It's when I do my best connecting, or a
Right.
book, audio book, or a podcast, or something where I'm getting downloads.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing.
That makes sense. Sometimes I try to balance it, right? Like sometimes you need that music to survive
True.
a brutal workout, right? Like when I'm doing a Murph, or when I'm doing something like brutal, then I definitely need music, right? So maybe sometimes the first half of a 10K or the first half of a half marathon, I'll do some audiobook stuff. And then when I'm really feeling like, okay, and I put on the music, and yeah, exactly. So I'm still, I'm not like a business robot, right? It's not like all I do is, try to work on business. You got to keep life fun. And that's why I live in Hawaii, right? It's kind of like it's ranked the number one healthiest, the number one happiest state in the United States. And that's the gift I want to give to myself and my family for our success. I could buy 20 Lamborghinis instead of living in Hawaii, but that's just not how I define success.
Beautifully said. I'm just curious, when you wake up that early, especially when you want to get a ton of work done before your family is done with breakfast, what time do you sleep?
Yeah, great question, because that's the real secret, right? Anyone can set their alarm early, but then you feel horrible if you don't go to bed in time, right? So we're usually getting the kids down at 8 p.m. sharp, and then I'm trying to start my bedtime routine like 9:15. Sometimes I end up going to bed at 9:30 or 10 or even 10:30, but I don't operate too well with less than 6 hours of sleep. And I've seen all the research that, less than 7 is pretty much lowering your IQ a little bit and making you non-optimal for health. And so trying to get 7 hours of sleep. So to get up, at the 4:30, I need to be getting to bed at 9:30 type thing.
So sometimes you'll get maybe 6, but you try to get 7.
Yeah. Recently I got 4 and figured I would just take a nap, and I did take a nap, and I just regretted it. It's just not enough for me typically. So unless it's an airplane flight that I have to catch, I really try to avoid 4.5 or 4 hours of sleep, because I know it's just going to equal pain.
I love it, brother. This is awesome. Can we do some more things before we land the
Sure.
plane? Maybe a little rapid fire, 1 or 2 word answers. We'll have a little fun. Are you ready for me?
Sure, let's go for it.
Okay. Your favorite movie?
Interstellar.
It's a good one. Christopher Nolan. Great one.
Yeah.
Favorite workout?
Murph.
For those that might not be familiar.
Traditionally, you're supposed to do it with a 25-pound vest. Almost nobody does. The Murph workout is run 1 mile, and then you do 100 pull-ups, you do 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then you run a mile. To make it more practical, you can break that up into sets of 20. So you just do 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 squats. You do that 20 times. That gets you all those numbers in the middle. Then you do the 1 mile run, and you can look online at what typical times are, but you feel like a superhero by the time you get that done.
Well said. Okay, got more. Your favorite guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. Butterfinger Blizzard from Dairy Queen. Pure cancer. Pure cancer. But if I was dying right now in a car accident, just shove some of that in my mouth and I'll die with a smile.
Will you ever indulge in a cocktail, or not your thing?
I used to. Never really had a problem, quote unquote, with it, but I realized while about to have my first kid in Singapore that I need more energy, not less. So I took a 3-month break and never missed it. So it's been 13 years since I've had a drink.
Good for you. Probably better off.
Probably.
Okay. Your favorite book?
Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I've read it with my kids 3 times. And Be Useful by Schwarzenegger is my favorite new book that came out.
Love Arnold. I saw that you loved the book. I read it myself.
Nice.
It's funny because I can't get enough. A lot of the
Yeah.
stuff he talks about in that book, you've heard him talk about before. Some new stuff too, but just his principles, and you can't argue the way the way he sees the world. He just thinks so big, and then he's able to
Yeah.
break it down into a framework. It's just awesome.
He's amazing. Yeah, awesome book. You should put your thoughts aside on Schwarzenegger if you don't love him already, and read that book, and then you'll love him.
Agreed. Beautifully said. Okay, I know you've been to a lot of places, so there's probably, I don't know, but your favorite or maybe your dream travel destination.
Bali's my favorite place. That's why we're living in Hawaii, and that's why I'm going there in 2 weeks. I wanted U.S. healthcare, U.S. police, U.S. education, but if I could, be living in Bali right now.
Amen. Okay, and last one, favorite morning ritual essential.
Favorite morning ritual essential. I read this one pager that has my monthly, quarterly, annual goals, and then it has about 50 different one-line statements on how I need to operate in the world. And I know if I keep those top of mind and do those things, that everything's going to go great.
Okay. Is spirituality important to you?
It is, but I'm not a huge believer in robotically going to church and doing things in a traditionally super religious way. But yeah, it is, but more in like a alignment with nature and good way.
Amen. Okay. This was unbelievable. What's the best way for our communities and our audience to support you? Is there something they can get involved in? Where can we direct them?
So one thing I could use help on is that I got to interview Tony Robbins because I said this one time on stage, and Schwarzenegger, he got laughed at to his face many times when he tried to become an actor, for example. People laughed at his face, right? Giannis became an NBA MVP, and people laughed in his face his first year when he said he was going to be MVP. So I think it's good to notice in life when people laugh at something, and that may be something you need to do more of. And at one of my events, I said, hey, if anybody's friends with like Michael Jordan or Taylor Swift, have them answer my questions for billionaires.com. And people literally laughed like, oh, that's ridiculous. But at the last event before that, I said, hey, if anyone's friends with Tony Robbins, let me know. And I got to interview him that same day. And you can see that interview on billionaires.com. So that's the request I'd make here. If anyone knows of a billionaire, even better if they're not famous, honestly, because then they don't have 1,000 gatekeepers. But we just want them to answer our 3 critical questions that we're asking 100 billionaires. And we want to make billionaires.com the #1 source of scaling strategies, mindsets of billionaires. And we've got 41 of those interviews done already. And if you look at them, I think that you'll see the great value in this. And I think it's going to be and already is a super unique project. So that's the #1 request, is just keep us in mind for billionaires.com. Anyone that would answer those interview questions via audio message or email or text message or Zoom, whatever's easy for them. We know they're busy. No video crew required. And then the other thing is just to check out familyoffices.com. So you can check out our events coming up, membership in our investor club, and feel free to shoot me an email if anyone has questions. Just richard@familyoffices.com.
I love it. And I have a few billionaires in my network that I'd love to introduce you to. I'd love for you to interview
Awesome.
them.
That'd be great. Appreciate it.
Richard, thank you so much for stopping by today and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me here, Craig. Appreciate it.
Hang out for 1 sec.